Hey, welcome guys, this is King Gunner with a Video Game Kingdom. Today what we're going to do is a video on my top 3 WWE or pro wrestling managers of all time. Now, we're going to start doing this series where it's just our top 3 of different things, whether it be wrestlers, managers, video games, Zelda weapons, Zelda whatever. But anyway, the title of this series is going to just be top 3. So, with that being said, we're going to look at our top 3 managers of all time in pro wrestling, as you know, based on my opinion. Now I know that when you make lists like this, that you're going to get different opinions from different people, and you may not agree with my list. A lot of this is based on eras in which you watched wrestling. A lot of these are based on different things of that sort. But so this is just my personal list. So right now, what you're looking at right now is Jimmy Hart. This is my number 3 manager of all time, and it was a little bit hard, to be honest, because my honorable mention I want to name, who's not on this list, is Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette was somebody I considered putting at number 3, but I actually chose not to. I think Jimmy Hart gave more to the business. Most of you guys that watch Jimmy Hart, that means you're probably my age or older. I'm 33 at the moment, so chances are you guys had a chance to see Jimmy Hart. If you're my age, you got to see him live. Actually, I turned 34 in a couple days. Now, some of the notable wrestlers that he's managed. He managed Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, Greg Valentine, Jerry the King Lawler, The $1 Million Man, King Kong Bundy, Earthquake, Dino Bravo, The Nasty Boys, The Big Show when he was the Giant, and the Honky Tonk Man. He's also a one-time AWA Southern Heavyweight Champion. Now, I'm just kind of showing you this, and his actual whole family that he's managed, I believe, for the most part, is down here. Jimmy Hart was one of those guys that when you watched him, he brought his own unique style to the industry that has never, in my opinion, been seen before. If you're a wrestling fan, you can't even see on television or anything a megaphone without thinking of Jimmy Hart. It's just kind of the way it goes. His colorful jackets, everything. He just did he meant a lot to the wrestling industry, in my opinion. He brought a new style. We can look at big names he's managed. Superstar Billy Graham, Adrian Adonis, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, the Barbarian. Now, a lot of these guys were eventually also managed by Bobby Heenan. But let's just look at it. The who's who. Ric Flair, The Giant, Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, Honky Tonk Man, Iron Sheik. Do you realize this man has actually managed AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Sting, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Bret Hart? He's literally wrestled the absolute best wrestlers almost pretty much of all time. You know what I'm saying? Okay, he hasn't managed Chris Jericho or Shawn Michaels, but he's managed Kevin Sullivan, Rick Rude, Bob Orton, Jesus Christ, Greg Valentine, Abdullah the Butcher even. You know what I mean? Heath Slater and Tyson Kidd even managed a second. I mean, it's just insanity. And then, of course, you can go down here and see the stables and teams, the Dungeon of Doom, the Faces of Fear, the First Family WCW. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Jimmy Hart is my number 3 guy. I think, without a shadow of a doubt, it's hard to put anybody above him, really. But ultimately, the 2 guys I did put above him are for good reason. So let's go ahead and move on to my number 2 guy. But let me know what you guys think about Jimmy Hart. I truly believe he was an icon in professional wrestling. Now, as we move on, we're going to move on to my number 2 guy, Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman, listen, I know a lot of you, especially old school fans, are going to shit on me for picking Paul Heyman because for some reason all these new wrestling fans, they tend to think Paul Heyman's the guy. And it's mainly because they didn't see any. To them, Paul Heyman's the only real manager they've ever seen. So to them, he is the guy. But unlike a lot of the old school wrestling fans, I also cannot discredit Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is definitely worthy of a top 5 location. I have him at number 2. And the reason is not only the management, what he gave us on screen in terms of his performance, but the fact that he legitimately was a manager and he legitimately was a businessman unlike any other, as you can see. I mean, with the ECW creation, with all of that. You know, I know you're going to look at him and say, well, he's only managed a few people in the WWE. Yes, that's true, but he managed 6 WWE World Heavyweight Champions. CM Punk, Kurt Angle, The Big Show, Rob Van Dam, Brock Lesnar. He's done quite a bit. So with that being said, let's go look at his thing. Because I actually believe his legacy is beyond who he's managed. When you go back to him being Paulie Dangerously and that issue with him in WCW, and then for him to move on and create the ECW, which there's a lot of people out there. I'm not one of them, but there's a lot of people out there that like the ECW even more than WCW. So, and you got to look at something. He's shit on Vince McMahon several times, and Vince McMahon keeps bringing him back, and the reason is simple. Paul Heyman, Paulie Dangerously, is an elite level performer. Now you're gonna look at his list and say, well, he hasn't managed that many guys. Let me say this: he managed the Undertaker. He now not when he was the Undertaker. He managed Steve Austin, Rick Rude, Arn Anderson, Larry Zbyszko, Beautiful Bobby Eaton, The Rock Don Morocco, Jimmy Snuka, even Rey Mysterio, Sabu, Taz, Brock, Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, Rob Van Dam, Matt Morgan, Rhino, Bob Orton, Hardcore Holly, CM Punk, Cesaro. Now, I know that list isn't quite as impressive as Jimmy Hart, but if you look at the fact that he got some of these guys over, who wasn't on the WWE roster, if we look back to WCW, you look back to ECW, because basically you can virtually say he managed the whole ECW roster. So that don't include Raven and everybody else, because legitimately he did. Paul Heyman, if you include his work as Paulie Dangerously, then running ECW, and then coming to the WWE, and then managing 6 WWE champions, you have to give him his credit. You just have to. Overall, with his management ability, his ability to promote, his ability to advertise, his ability to market, which is what a real manager does, I got to give him number 2 on the list. Big ups to Paulie Dangerously, Paul Heyman. He's one of the best in the world. Which is going to lead me to the number 1 guy. The number 1 guy. There you go. I don't see how anyone cannot have Bobby the Brain Heenan as number 1 on their list. I just don't see how anyone cannot have him in there. He was the most witty, amazingly funny entertainer I've ever seen in pro wrestling, period. That's not just managers. That's wrestlers, announcers. He did it all. Whether it was being the color commentary guy, whether it was being a manager, the one-liners Bobby Heenan can say could make you spit your milk through your nose. He was legendary. And even before that, when he was managing Nick Bockwinkel and things like that, you guys got to go watch the Bobby Heenan DVD if you have not seen it. Bobby Heenan was, oh my God, he may have been the greatest entertainer in all of wrestling and wrestling history. The way he was on that mic, I think he was revolutionary when you look at it. I think he changed what was acceptable. You know, he was doing Attitude before the Attitude Era even existed. You see what I'm saying? He was just, they've tried to replace Bobby Heenan a million times, and it just can't be done. And then as a manager, who doesn't remember the Heenan family? The Heenan family, they were constantly chasing that world title. Never really got it. They had other titles. Bobby Heenan was never the guy that managed the guy. He was always the guy that managed the guy chasing the guy. He always managed the evil monster that Hulk Hogan had to beat. He literally, Bobby Heenan's career was based on, in terms of managing, was based on being the guy that you wondered and that Hulk Hogan was constantly trying to defeat. And you may say, well, no, he was trying to beat Andre the Giant. No, he was trying to beat Paul Orndorff. No, he was trying to beat Harley Race, King Kong Bundy, Ravishing Rick Rude. Listen, the guy behind those guys was Bobby Heenan. A lot of these guys, if you look at this list, the only guy on this list that could really talk, there's 3 of them. Right now, I'm looking at, off the first list you have right over here, the only guy here that was really good at talking was Ravishing Rick Rude. Bockwinkel, too. Over here, we have Harley Race was good, but Curt Hennig was good at what he did. But really, the Ric Flair was the guy, the talker over here. I'll give Curt Hennig props, and maybe even Harley Race. But everybody else, they had to be taught to talk, like even Paul Orndorff. Over here, look at it. There's not many guys here that are just talkers. I understand Colt Cabana has a radio show, but CM Punk is the guy. CM Punk is the only one even really over here. So if you look at this, Bobby the Brain Heenan had to manage guys that couldn't talk. He had to be their mouthpiece. And then if you look at when he was doing commentary, I think Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan is the greatest commentary team of all time. Fuck JR and Jerry Lawler. I love them to death, but they're nowhere near what we have with Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon, in my opinion. So not only is Bobby Heenan the greatest manager of all time, he very well may be the greatest wrestling entertainer of all time. Anything that came out of his mouth was pretty much sure to be funny, mean. Either way, you didn't want to miss Bobby Heenan's commentary. Let's just say that. And we've never had anything like it since then. With all that said, I want to give you guys my honorable mention. All you old school wrestling fans are going to love this. I don't even have to go into his story. Bam! Ralphus. Okay, I'm joking there. He's not obviously a top manager. I just wanted to show you his face. Anyway, with that being said, guys, this was my top 3 pro wrestling managers of all time. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments section what you guys think. If you guys disagree, if you guys do agree. Either way, man, it'll be fun to talk about. So anyway, I'll see you guys in my next episode when I do another top 3. Let me know what top 3s you guys would like me to do. Peace out.